Hey witches! I am doing this video specifically as a response to what happened last week when I had to cancel our meeting and I had to rush my son to the hospital because he had a pretty bad seizure. So the first thing that I want to say is I really considered it a blessing that I was still home at that time. Normally I would leave before 6 o'clock to go to Cats and start our meeting, but I was fine-tuning the notes like I do sometimes, and I heard a really big thud. Our house is 2 levels, and I went upstairs to figure out what it was, and I heard a weird thumping noise in my son's room. So when I ran in there, he was on the floor face down, convulsing, and he had blood and foam, and it was a horrific scene, to say the least. He was covered in throw up, which is a common thing when you have a seizure, that you could go to the bathroom on yourself or throw up because your whole body is convulsing. So I had to call the EMS. I had people come get him. We went to the hospital. We were only there a couple hours and he had another seizure. At that point, we went from an ER to a children's hospital. I had very little time to come back home and gather things to go to a hospital that was about an hour and a half away because they needed to see a pediatric neurologist. So I've explained to you my crisis. This is an all of the sudden thing, no idea. I didn't know my son had really been having seizures like this. I knew that we thought he had a possible stroke seizure back in December, and that was sort of the beginning of things. And they didn't find anything wrong with him when he went into the ER at that time, and that was on December 12th. So fast forward to, I don't even know what date it was because the last week and a half has been a blur, but about a month later, and now we have another seizure. So it got really heavy really fast. My kid's never been sick. We've never been in hospitals. I've never been sick. It just hasn't been a thing in our family. So this was our first true, real experience with being in hospitals, and it was shocking. It was shocking for everybody, I think, to just understand the ins and outs and know everything that goes into it. So like I said, I was leaving the ER. This is about 2 in the morning when the transport, they had to actually send a children's ambulance transport up to the hospital he was at, which is just down the street from our house, to travel and take him back an hour and a half south. It's pretty wild that he's still technically considered pediatrics because he is 6'2" and 260 pounds. So he is man size, but because of his age, he's only 17, they needed to send him to a pediatric unit. So I came back to my house. I had, the ambulance kind of thought I was going to follow them down, and I said, no, I know I need to grab some things because this is going to be a stay. You can already tell. And they had to cut his clothes off of him, so he was just in a gown, and I wanted to bring him some stuff because I knew eventually he would come around and he would want something, and being it that we were going to travel so far to the hospital, I was like, let me go home. I really need to grab some things that are self-care for me and then stuff for him so that he's comfortable when he comes to. So I wanted to go over the spiritual side of this for myself because this is witchcraft in real life. This is the kind of situations that until they happen, it's really hard to give advice to somebody or say what you would do until you really go through it. So my video today is about that. I want you guys to know that I got thrust into an extremely traumatic, heartbreaking, desperation, like anxiety provoking event with my child, and how did I handle it? What did I do? What did I go through? So the first thing that I did when I came home is I knew that I was just going to need clothes for him and clothes for me. I did choose things that were more comfortable. Normally I would go with certain colors. I would think about the colors more, but I just went with comfort and packed the clothes. The next thing that I grabbed was actually my jewelry. So the stones that I wear have specific meanings for me, and when I wear them, I'm able to think about and have little mantras or affirmations as I touch them or I say something about the stones. So that was the first thing that I put on, and I know that seems really weird to throw on your jewelry when you're about to go to the hospital, but my jewelry has significance to me, and I kept it on the entire time I was there because of that. The next thing besides rings is the bracelets that I wear. Ironic enough, I had given my son a bracelet just like this. We have matching bracelets within the family. he was wearing his at the time of his seizure. So when they cut off his clothes, they didn't save anything except the bracelet, which I was able to get back. They gave to me. I felt right there that it was kind of like, okay, I'm looking for little signs as things are happening and unfolding in my life. I'm trying not to be too right there in the moment, and I'm trying to kind of hover above it and say, all right, well, what am I supposed to experience? What can we get out of this? What am I supposed to learn? Where is this event going to take our life paths? So the bracelet was the first sign. The other things that I grabbed from home, I grabbed 4 stones, not really thinking about what they do. It was more of an intuitive grab of looking at my stuff and saying, all right, I want different stones to take with me. Blue kyanite is one, and this is about spirituality for me. This is staying connected. It reminds me a lot of selenite, which I use more for personal stuff, but so this would be life path, the journey that everybody in my life is in with me. So kyanite for sure. The next one that I chose was tiger's eye, and for me, tiger's eye is a grounding stone, and that's where I wanted to stay. I wanted to try to not get too in my head. I wanted to stay in the, I don't want to say in the moment, but like I wanted to stay grounded while things were happening and not lose myself and not be able to cope or handle something. Again, this was extremely traumatic for me, watching him in convulsions and just never having gone through anything like this before. So I grabbed my tiger's eye. My next stone, which is my go-to stone anytime my family members are sick, when my husband had COVID, I made a health jar for him to look at, smell, and repeat mantras while he was in the hospital for a week. So I immediately grabbed my carnelian. Lastly, I knew that I was going to have negative feelings about being in the hospital. I kind of already felt the heaviness of the situation, the dark, grim feeling emotions, so I made sure to grab some smoky quartz just to remind myself, like, I do believe that all things have purpose, even when they're awful, horrible things, even if it's a death, whatever it is. I do believe that it leads you to your highest purpose or on a path that is for growth and healing. You may notice I sound congested or hoarse because I got sick while I was in the hospital, because there's a lot of sick people in the hospital, so I contracted 2 viruses while I was there. They're more like common cold type viruses, so I'm not super worried about them, but it is making me lose my voice a little bit. Next, I knew that for me, smells. I thought of the hospital smell immediately, and I wanted to grab some essential oils. I got this beautiful gift at Christmas from my brother, and again, the tiger's eye theme. He packaged this, I hadn't smelled it yet, but he packaged this essential oil with tiger's eye in it, and when I rolled it on, it's a citrus blend, and I was like, yes, that will make me feel awake, grounded, present, just with purpose. I felt like it would really open my eyes. Funny thing about this is when I would roll it on both myself and Cameron, we would just put it on the backs of our hands so that we could smell it. Every time the nurse or doctors walked in, they said, wow, it smells so good in here. What did you guys do? What is that? And I had one doctor actually ask me where I got it, and she thought that it would be very useful for other patients to have an aromatherapy type I was going to say event, but an aromatherapy for their room that can boost your mood. And I knew that that's why I brought it along with me. So this one was for my daytime, for sure. I already knew that sleeping at the hospital was going to be super hard, so I also grabbed an essential oil that's just a lavender. It's a blended lavender that I got when I visited Michigan a couple years ago. And so we put this on before bedtime, or when we were woken up in the middle of the night, as they're taking blood or doing his blood pressure, checking all of his vitals. And if were having a hard time getting back to sleep, I would just put a little bit of the lavender oil on the backs of our hands again, and just let that, fill the room and kind of calm us down. So those were my go-to tools as I prepped to go to the hospital, and a little bit about how I use them. So my stones I really just kept in my pocket. I grabbed them, I kept them in my pocket always. So every time a doctor would come in and I really didn't know what was going to happen, I would just rub the stones and remember, like, this is all for a purpose. Just pay attention and look for the signs. For me, numerology is so big in my practice, in my life, that I was always looking for numbers that I knew would mean something for me or that told a story. So the really cool thing about that is Cameron's first ER room, it was 117. When we got to the new hospital, the children's hospital, his room number was 711. All right, 7 is my number, that's my birth path number. But what's even better is that 9 is his birth path number, and 11 is a master spiritual number. So when you add those numbers up, they equal his number. And my number was there, and a spiritual number was there. So I felt like, even though this was really scary and awful, and I had no idea the outcome, I didn't know what they were going to find wrong with him or anything. I just kept telling myself, you're supposed to be here. This is supposed to happen. You chose this. This is your life path. Start looking at what you can accept, questions you can ask, whatever it is that you need to learn. But find where you are supposed to be getting something out of this, which I know sounds weird because this is my son going through all of this. But again, I see these experiences as opportunities to learn something and grow in some kind of way. So even for him, he knows he's been raised with all of this. So when he was finally feeling better, I did tell him, I said, you want to hear something cool? Because when you have a seizure, you don't remember 6 hours before the seizure really, or 6 hours after. It erases a lot of your memory. It makes you feel very unsure about times, places where you were. So he was unaware of a lot of the things going on. So when I told him about it, he said, does that seem like a good message to you? And I told him, for me, yes. That means my numbers are present, your numbers are present. We are where we're supposed to be. The other sign that we got on the first day that we were in the children's hospital is there were bald eagles flying right outside of our hospital room. We were on the 7th floor, and I was like, that's from home. We have bald eagles that fly over our home here in Florida. And so when I saw them an hour and a half south, I was like, okay, that's one of my signs. That's one of the things where I just feel like that's a powerful message. It doesn't have any specific message for me. It's just seeing one, I think, is such a privilege that I feel honored and grateful for life. So that was sort of what the bald eagle brought up for me when it flew literally right past our bedroom window. Like, it's so close because we were on the top floor. It's like it flew right over the top of the building. It was wild. So then after that, one of the other things that I took from my home, my dad passed in 2011, and I was extremely close with him. We were best friends, talked on the phone for hours and hours. You know, it was kind of, it was one of those relationships where you could be talking on the phone so long your phone starts to die. And remember, back in 2011, phones did not last that long, where we would have to plug up the phone in order to continue our conversation. So with my dad passing in 2011, the other item that I brought for myself was his ashes. My sister gave me this necklace that has his ashes in it, and I took this with me. You know, this would be considered a jewelry piece, but I actually just kept it in my pocket. I did wear it under my shirt the first day, but I didn't want anybody to ask questions about it, so I kind of kept it hidden. It was really just there for me, the symbology of that. You know, the other important thing that I want to tell you guys that I did know divination. Like, numerology to me is a sign. It's not really divination for me, even though it is a form of divination because you get signs and messages from it. But for me, I didn't do any kind of divination. I didn't ask the universe, make my child okay, please bring him back to me, you know, make everything work out. I didn't concentrate on any of that. I didn't ever request anything from the universe while we were there. I really focused my energy on, we're here for a reason, let's find it out. Like, I felt like we were there in a discovery sort of energy where, all right, things are really happening with his health. Something needs to change, obviously. Something is going on with him. And we're here to find that out and let all the other scary stuff fade away from me, because it wasn't going to help me in that moment to be afraid. So strangely, I didn't feel afraid. I didn't feel nervous or anxious. I really felt like I'm looking for answers and I was waiting for them. So it was more of an inquiry. And with Cameron, he kind of liked the last 3 days of it because we really just sat around and watched Disney Plus for 3 days straight. So we watched Marvel movies and Disney movies and caught up on stuff and had many conversations. And because he's 17, we've sort of been distanced, you know, because he's 17 and he doesn't want to hang out with his mom anymore. And us doing this really made him realize how much he missed being around me and how much our relationship meant to him. So that was another positive that I feel like we got out of it. Even though it was super super scary thinking back on it. Like the moments it was happening, the first ER room was really scary, especially watching him have a second seizure. I just knew that that it was something that, you know, that there was going to be a lot more to it. So we were in the hospital for almost 6 days. And this is also, like, I should have said this at the beginning of the video, but I got so many amazing, wonderful notes from everybody. Like, for everyone who sent me a note that I just was not mentally able to respond to, because it was really hard to go back and send personal messages to all of you. You know, I am sorry that I didn't have the energy to do that, but also I hope that you can understand that I was just in a place where I needed to be there, and I really couldn't break out and do anything else. I had thought about doing a video when I was in the hospital, and I might have if the Wi-Fi had been strong enough, because I really wanted to update everybody. I knew that so many people were worried and were probably wondering what happened. And of course, I felt somewhat guilty for canceling 2 meetups just because of what we were going through. But we are back, and I wanted to make sure that I got this video done so that everybody can hear the story, because I know how many people were sort of affected when they heard the news that I was rushing my son to the hospital. Sometimes that can be very triggering. If I heard that, I would be constantly worried about my friends, like, are you okay? Are you okay? And so for all of your lovely notes that you sent for us, for the family, for Cameron, I truly appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Like, I want to have full disclosure with my life so that you guys can see my practice in action, and it's not just lessons that I put together to help you learn, but I would like to be an example so that you have something to learn from as well that's in real life, that's not just a lesson plan. You know, this is something that you go through that's like, how do you handle the death of a family member? Speaking of that, while my son and I are in the hospital an hour and a half away, my husband is here and his father is fading fast with COPD. So we're dealing with several things at the same time, and we're not able to be there for each other. So it's just another thing that I think, how to take care of ourselves. You know, normally my husband and I get to be there for each other, but right now we each need to be separated to take care of people who need us at this time. And I just look at that as, that's okay. We're going to come back together and it's going to be fine. But you kind of get pulled away from your norm and thrust into things and taken down to a baseline, and what your baseline looks like as your practice. You know, what do you turn to? Is it affirmations? Is it stones? Is it a candle? Do you think of doing a spell? Do you do nothing? Is it so much that you do nothing? And whatever it is, it's okay, but check in with yourself and ask, like, is this how I want to approach the situation? If something went like this was to happen to me, how would I react or handle it? I hope this video was helpful. I definitely expected it to be a little bit shorter. I didn't think I had so much to say about it. But the biggest thing is that I want to let you guys know that we are on the path to recovery. Cameron is home. We're mostly fine. He's on a lot of medication at the moment, especially to make sure that he doesn't have another seizure. There's a lot more hospital time we're going to have, and figuring out, you know, is this hereditary, and just all that goes into the testing of, like, all of a sudden this random thing comes up in your health and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to figure all this out now. So I'm glad that it happened while he was at home. I have no idea if he had been at a friend's house or riding his bike or wherever he could have been when this seizure took place, but he was in his bed, and he took a hard fall from it, but he's doing a lot better. And he doesn't know all of the people who sent in the notes. I'm not ready to tell him that yet, because he's a pretty emotional kid, and I know he'll feel responsible in some way to respond, but I'm responding for him, and I know that it really helped to see all the messages come through. Even though I couldn't individually respond to everybody, I do want to say thank you guys so much for thinking about us, keeping us in your positive thoughts, prayers, vibes, whatever it is that you sent. We really appreciate it. And I will see you guys on the next video. Hopefully nothing like this, but something that'll help you live your best life with your practice. Bye.